damn it, that wasn't what we were talking about. We were talking about why I got into this in the first place. And so the answer is, because I was pissed off about how there was no viable solution for people looking to prevent the rapid deterioration of their purchasing power and the ongoing infringement upon their civil liberties and the increasingly divided nature of our society based upon a false consensus driven by Web 2. Boom! Oh, by the way, they ended up probably killing my partner. So that's why we had to suspend it. Michael, why are you doing any of this anyway? Like, we get that you lost your life savings in Celsius Network. That explains the motivation. We sort of buy 50-50 that you're doing it for the rest of other people, but there's always a plurality of intent, so we'll give you the benefit of the doubt, I guess. Why would you even get into emergent tech? Oh, that is a great question. Let's talk about Michael for a second, which is actually not what I want to do, but it's important that you have context, right? So, when I was in my former life as shared CEO of a life science SME multinational, I got the great privilege of spending time at the Hill, of doing federal contracting, doing federal contracting relative to, let's say, US aid. And US aid, it's 1% of US GDP, right? The United States is the most generous country in the world relative to its GDP. And it sends foreign disaster relief funds. This is from from US aid, and economic development. Now, I had the privilege of getting to know the gentleman who ran these programs. And in short, because I don't want to call anyone out, I don't want any dates to be put on anything, but in short, we could be either saving roughly half that money and having the same impact, and on the economic development front, it's not that great, FYI, and we can discuss that later. Not to say there's not trying, and soft diplomacy is good, but just the net impact hasn't been good because of implementation. But that we could also be helping twice the amount of people, right? Let's talk about the foreign disaster, if we had these funds transferred over the blockchain. So people saw that, let's say there was a 35-cent item and someone put a 15-cent margin on it, including landed shipping, right? And or maybe application, right, of administration rather of a medicine or something like that, right? That the dollar or the 50 cents, right, got there at the 50-cent value, and it wasn't like that a dollar got there at a 50-cent value, right? So that's one thing. The second thing would be like, well, if we can track longitudinally, right, the effect that we had on, let's say, economic development, we can better manage these programs so that we can save more people. And blockchain and Web3 ID, okay, I'm not going to say which consensus mechanism, which chain, which company, which horse to back, if you will, for Web3 ID, although we have partners who will be announcing, of course, because we're on top of it. And not the biggest fan of anyone who kowtows to ESG. Yep. Don't kowtow to ESG. So we'll be making those announcements. Anyway, so yeah, we want to see these changes from happening. When I saw this, I realized there was nothing I could do. And that there was no way I can go to the government and say, hey guys, why don't you just put everything on the blockchain that's taxpayer funded, because that will be super good for everybody. And we can save the taxpayers a bunch of money. We can make your lives much easier. We can shrink the size of the government that has to monitor for corruption. And we can ensure OFAC compliance and FCPA compliance and all these compliance, like everything you're trying to regulate, we can do that for pennies on the dollar, right? And then just ensure that we're helping the most amount of people. And more than that is that the American people who think that they're effectively getting robbed at this point because of everything that's going on, I mean, they're not loving the supermarket and the gas pump right now, let's be honest, fellas, right? It's like, do you know when someone sees the good that they do, that they're more incentivized to do it, as opposed to just reading it in a circular that no one subscribes or knows about, and the few people who do kind of know that it's like, meh, it could have been much better, or meh, this was maybe not told as truthfully as it could. Well, Emergent tech solves that. So anyway, knew that wasn't going to happen. Sold my position, had some capital, learned about finance and trading and blah, 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 blah. Did some speculative stuff, made a bunch of capital, and started a foundation, started decentralized media. Now, the decentralized media was started with a guy, a warrior really, a refugee of Syria, not from the last wave, but a prior wave. He was actually, did propaganda for Al Jazeera at one point. He was captured by the something Brotherhood and escaped at some point, which was pretty crazy. Never got too big into the details on that. Then he went up north and did propaganda for the something BC for a while, and then he left. And the funny thing, because he was just like, wow, I'm doing propaganda and just lying to everybody all the time, and I would really like to lead a meaningful life. And he was a virtuous guy despite his shortcomings, and so he wanted to help do something else, right? So I sold my position, and he left his station, right, in the propaganda space, and we both descended into what I call, or I guess what anybody would call, is hell. Yeah, hell, where essentially it burns off all your dead wood, everything that's not the truest, the goodest, the most divine part about you. And then most people, they end up just turning into ash because they reject the burning of the dead wood. Other people lean into it, boom, boom, boom. They lean into it. They're like, let's burn this ish up. So yeah, I wasn't super duper strong like that, but I was strong enough where I came out different in kind, as did he. So we started this, and long story short, he had his thing going on for independent documentaries happening. They're being funded and again on the blockchain and distributed so that there wouldn't be any type of censoriousness. This is happening at the same time, circa the COVID shutdowns and all the questions regarding the efficacy of this and the true intent of that, and what this guy was really trying to do, and what different authoritative bodies were making decisions on and how they were making those decisions, and squash of dissent, right? all these type of things, right? So it wasn't totally popular, and he got pretty high up there, and in short, TradFi shut him down, and then somehow the publications knew about it before that happened. Interesting. And then they knew our association somehow. No idea how. What happened was I started to trust TradFi a little bit less. Just a little bit, because I kind of destroyed my credit score and my credit line and access to all that good stuff, all those safety measures that took me a whole life to build up. So that's when I went into digital assets with all this extra money I now had, and then saw that there were a few companies that were incorporated in the States, and me being like a New York City 1990s classical liberal type, not to say that I'm a Democrat or a Republican today, but that's the type I was, right? Kind of, an ish talker, and just, cool with this, cool with that, cool with this, but don't mess with this, don't mess with that, right? Basic stuff, basic B stuff, right? So I trusted that they were properly vetted, and that the claims that they were making were based upon whatever evaluation process allowed them to move a company that would absorb retail funds to the amount they had in the billions, and then deploy them however they had been claiming to versus how they were. And as a result of that, they took it all. And so soon, hopefully, we can convince the judge by proxy of distribution through very authoritative distribution mechanisms, publication articles and broadcast media, and the public can understand there's maybe 3 or 4 points that, if we don't know for certain, it is more than likely that this was a setup and a Ponzi prior to having incorporated in the States, and it was a failure of the state of New Jersey, and the state of New Jersey should be, sorry guys, but liable for financial losses and emotional damages that have happened to the depositors, or the now unsecured creditors of the Celsius network. But that aside, because that's legal, lawfare stuff and whatever, we hope that the judge would at least provide some time to allow us to crowdsource some of the intel that would show if this was the case, that they were a Ponzi, or show if they were stealing, or show if they were guilty of embezzlement, etc., right? sometime before they allow the selling of other people's stuff. The same people who believe in the system that you're saying, don't not believe in our system, guys. Pay taxes, guys, because the system works. If you're asking them to trust the system, and the system allowed this through, and you don't give the people the opportunity to, I know this is like guilty till proven innocent, but like it's so obvious, right? Like just at least satisfy the curiosity. We're not saying this is mandatory, but judge, please, like just say, show us the Series B financials. Just say that, right? Let's just see. Let's just see if the Celsius network was a Ponzi prior to being incorporated here. Oh my God, was this even answering a question? I forget. Anyway, this is answer to something. Hope you found it interesting. Till the next one. Oh, what are we doing in the future? Yeah. So Celsius network in the state of New Jersey. Got it. And a recent publication. Okay. Now it makes sense. On to the next one.